So now we have Stefano for his next presentation.
Thank you very much. As I said at the beginning of my presentation, the issue of utilization rate is driven by two factors. One is the product-specific rules of origin. The most common in Asia is regional value content 40%. So I may meet out of FOB price on my product. So that's the product-specific rules of origin aspect. If you comply with or not these product-specific rules of origin. The second point is how to prove it. You know, okay, I comply with the regional value control of 40%, but I need to prove it, you know, and that's the issue of the proof of origin. And we need to, and that's we're going to show, I mean, in this presentation, is quite, there are different ways of proof of origin, and that is what apparently is creating problem to firms in using the free trade area agreement. So the first obstacle is, do I make it 40% of the FOB price? And the second obstacle for firms to use free trade area agreement is, how do I prove it? And that's and then we have to measure, you know, how the different ways of proving rules of origin is really trade facilitating for firms. Proving rules of origin, according to surveys done by ITC, International Trade Center, I mean, is one of the most formidable non-tariff measures, is what is really obstaculating or perceived as a cost by firms in proving rules of origin. And the survey that has been done not only by ITC, but also by ADB in the past and by JETRO, Japanese External Trade Association, they found out that firms, they have difficulties in improving rules of origin and in obtaining a certificate of origin or in making import declaration when at the time of importations. So all these firms, I mean, they are declaring that they have difficulties improving rules of origin, but why they have, what are more specifically these difficulties? What are the cost of complying and proving rules of origin? We need to be more specific, because if we have to address a problem, obviously we need to exactly define what the problem is. And so only the firms, they are the best placed to tell us what are the real problems that they are facing in proving rules of origin. And then we can, once that we have clearly identified what the problems are in complying with proof of origin, only at that time we can provide a real indication to governments on how to facilitate the use of free trade area agreements. And that's the scope of the research. The issue at stake, I mean, why, I mean, the issue of rules of origin and of proof of origin is so, you know, difficult, I mean, and to come with, is because there are no multilateral rules, in the sense that there are no, in the WTO, there are, for instance, the Customs Valuation Agreement, which provides multilateral rules on how to evaluate the goods at the time of importation. There is the harmonized system, which is tell us, I mean, to customs on how to classify goods. But so these are multilateral agreements which are used by most trading nations. But we do not have a multilateral agreement on rules of origin, and we do not have a multilateral agreement on certification of origin. So each country is a no man's land. And how we're going to see that there are different ways in the free trade area agreements on how to prove rules of origin, which is turning into a cost for firms. We have a literature on compliance cost of rules of origin, and this literature mostly is done by economists using economic theories and techniques, which comes, I mean, to a percentage of the compliance cost with rules of origin, which varies from 12% according to NAFTA to 6%. These are percentages of the compliance cost. The problem that we have with these kind of studies and survey that they indicate that there is a problem, but they don't indicate the solution. They don't clearly indicate the cause of the problem. And when you don't know the cause of the problem, then, I mean, is the remedy to obviate, I mean, to this cost of compliance are not contained in the studies. They're not clearly identified. Now, the issue is that then there is a need to carry out a new research in order to clearly frame what are the problems that the firms are facing, and from the problems that the firms are facing, to draw up a solution for the governments to address, for instance, the low utilization rate of ATIGA. So low utilization rate of ATIGA is there, is a fact. We need to provide a remedy to this. And in order to provide the right remedy, we need to go to the firms and listening from them, what are the problems? What's the matter? Why are you not using ATIGA? I mean, it's because of what reason? And then we may suggest to the intergovernmental machinery, to governments, on how to redress this low utilization. That's what we're aiming at. And obviously, it's not so easy, you know, because the world is complex, you know, and we have a different method of proof of origin. And each one will say that his own rules of origin is the best. You know, that's when we are facing this kind of difficulties in identifying what is the most trade facilitating way to prove rules of origin. What firms would prefer as method to comply with rules of origin. The method of proof of origin on how goods, you know, can travel, you know, because we are human beings, we have passport, and the goods, they have certificate of origin or e-certificate of origin. But there are different ways, you know, to prove it. The first one, the most traditional, is that the goods, they need to be, in order to comply with proof of origin, you need to have a CO, a certificate of origin, and the CO is a piece of paper which needs to be stamped and needs to be signed by a customs official. That's, for instance, is the way that has been used in RCEP, which is one of the most, I would say, archaic method of rules of origin, because it's based on physical paper, stamp, and also the signature of the customs official. You know, and the customs official maybe one day, I mean, he has a bad day, he signs one way, and another day he signs the other way, and the signature is not the same, and the certificate of origin is refused. No, that's something that is happening, and I think we have also some factual evidence from ASEAN experience. Another way, I mean, to certify rules of origin is the certificate of origin is signed by the exporter. So you don't need customs to stamp the certificate of origin. That's, for instance, I mean, is used by Canada in the GSP scheme. Then we had another school of thought that basically there is a statement of origin which is self-certification. The exporter, in many European Union free trade area agreements, the exporter can simply self-certify that the good is originating. Or you can have a variation of this, but not all exporters are allowed to provide a self-certification, but only approved exporters. Approved exporters by customs are entitled to make such a kind of statement of origin. You have this kind of facility under some agreement between ASEAN and the European Union. And then we have another system that in order to make a self-declaration, you need to register first. So you go to a portal, you register into the portal, and then the portal gives you a number, and you become a registered exporter number 32, and then you are allowed to self-certify, you know, that your goods are originating. That's it's called REX, Registered Exporter Database, which is used by the European Union for the generalized system of references. Then we have another kind of variation on how you can prove origin, that is not the exporter anymore, but it's the importer. The importer makes the origin declaration at the time of importation. And that's the method used by United States. United States is the importer who makes the declaration, is the importer who is the solely responsible for making declaration of origin at the time of importation. It is also increasingly used by Japan. And then I think our colleagues from ESCAP just discussed, I mean, we have the ECOs. And the ECOs, there are many initiatives on which, I mean, that the issue of proof of origin is managed by IT solutions. And most recently in ASEAN, we have the ECOs that are transmitted through ASEAN single windows. And I think that my colleagues is going to focus on this later on to discuss more on the implementation of the ECOs. So we have this variety of proof of origin. The issue is, what is the best? What is the best way of what is the most facilitating way for firms? And we're going to hear, I mean, from firms, I mean, in doing this presentation, what they consider the best ways. In the World Customs Organization, the best way, what they do recommend, you know, as a preferred way is self-declaration. Why self-declaration? Because the exporter, I mean, doesn't need to go to ASEAN single windows. The exporter is entitled to, and is responsible to make his own declaration of origin. That's the preferred way indicated by the World Customs Organization. But as we see, there are many different practices. And what are the, I would say, the dividing lane? Because many of the practices that we have seen, we have examined, are based on the existence of certifying authorities. In the sense, there are government involved. Even in the ECOs, who release the ECOs? It's the government. So there is a kind of what is dividing, the dividing lane between the different schools of thought is the degree of government presence in the management of certificate of origin. The ECOs, they are very facilitating, but also there is a dose of government presence who's releasing the ECOs and who is allowing the transmission of ECOs from government to government. When you are in a self-declaration by the exporter, you don't need the government, you self-certify. And only if there are problems, then the governments come into play to certify what you said. That's the role of the government, but it's post facto, it's not ante facto. So the real question, when, because now I mean in the world, we have two schools of thought. One is heading towards ECOs, you know, which is very, very much so within Southeast Asia, but also in other parts of Asia, or the Pacific, like Japan or Australia, New Zealand, very much. And if you look at the CPTPP, it is not ECOs, but it's self-declaration. It's an importer or an exporter-based declaration that govern their school of thought. The point is that we need to have an indication from the firms what is the best. What is the best self-declaration and what form of self-declaration, or is the best ECOs? I think that the firms are the best placed to provide inputs to this question. We're talking about proof of origin, but proof of origin, is one part of the administrative aspects of rules of origin. Then we discussed the documentary evidence of direct shipment. You need to provide documentary evidence on how the goods has been shipped to your clients. You need to have a fair counter invoicing, if the sale has been made by an intermediary. You need to provide, documentary evidence to make sure, that the goods that are left to your factory are the same that have been received at the port of entry. And there are also issues related to back-to-back certificate of origin. Now, the issue is we have been discussing, and I think that we'll develop more this argument. We know that the ECOs is an exchange of certificate of origin, but the certificate of origin at the time of customs clearance need to be accompanied by packing list, evidence of direct consignment, invoicing. You need all these in order to make a custom declaration. So if you make electronically transmittable, the certificate of origin is only one part of the game. You need also the packing list, invoice, the evidence of direct consignment. So in order to make a custom clearance. So if you only talk about transmitting, electronically transmitting ECOs is one element of a big game. What about the rest that you need to electronically transmit also the other documentary evidence in order to make a successful custom clearance, which is trade facilitating for firms. What we are discussing, what we are developing is on how to orientate ourselves between these different forms of certification. And so what we do, we started to map procedures, because there are many other FTAs, and we have different certificate of origin, but we also have different requirement and different entries in this certificate of origin, that one is different from another. So we need to start to put them in order to understand the problem, we need to frame the problem. So we started to codify the procedures that are embedded in all these different FTAs in order to getting to a solution and providing guidance on how trade facilitating reforms can be put on the table. And then we're going to assign value to the codified procedures in order to understand what are the most trade facilitating and what are the less trade facilitating, in order to understand what are the solution to the problems and the differences that we have witnessed. So the work ahead, what we already started, and we will start with Vietnam. Why Vietnam? Because Vietnam has is an ASEAN member countries that has a wide variety of FTAs, and to Japan, United States. So the Vietnam firms, they are facing different way of proving rules of origin. So, and is a good place to start with, because the Vietnamese firms, they're facing this kind of varieties, and they are the best place to tell us what is working the best for them. And the aim of the research, is to identify what is the best way of proof of origin and what is the best way to have convergence, because we have seen that there are different FTAs with different way of dealing with proof of origin. We need not only to select, to identify what is the best one, but also to identify a way in which these different FTAs, they can converge to the best way. And basically, RCEP implementation, we already witnessed that we had an interview with one firm 1 week ago in Vietnam, and they said, what about RCEP? They say, we have not heard from our government yet, in the sense that on how to use RCEP. And obviously, this is one of the issues that we'll be facing and we'll be investigating in future research. I thank you very much and for your attention, and I leave it back to Pramila.
Thank you very much, Stefano. So I would suggest now that we will move to the second session, where we're going to discuss more into detail the different types of proof of origins, the different systems that exist. And since you are the speaker who are going to introduce all the different systems, but I suggest that we hear first from our colleague from UNSCAP, because he is going to present something about the e-certificates and the different developments, different projects by UNSCAP, before we go into the more general picture of all the different systems. So thank you very much. Yes, now it's time to hear to our colleague from UNSCAP, move to the next session, more specific proof of origin. So Armen, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to present about the certificates of origin, focusing on the role of the certificate of origin as one of the, let's say, essential key documents for the cross-border transactions, and actually mentioning those certificates of origin as one of the licenses, permits, certificates, and other restrictions play a very essential role for the trade facilitation across the borders And on the global level, there are many challenges and many benefits to digitalize the certificates of origin. Right now, in many countries, there are still some exchanges of information of certificates of origin that are based on the paper-based or, let's say, PDF. And when we are talking about digitalization of the information, and specifically about certificates of origin, we need to be clear that we are not talking about exchange of information based on the PDF version, because PDF version does not enable ICT systems to collect that information, to store that information, and have structures data basis for that information that can be used for different purposes. Just an overview: what is certificate of origin? What is why it is very important overall for the cross-border trade transaction? Of course, one of the first role is the proof of origin, to certify the origin of the goods that are originated, or let's say in many cases the goods are originated based on the rules of origin, that the raw material have been complemented together with different products and different components, and the final product is originated if 75% in many regulations, if 75% of the processes and components have been complemented together in one country. So this is one aspect. Of course, certificate of origin play a role also for the fraud prevention. In many government procurement bid processes, the certificate of origin is one document that is also required. I mean, you may have heard that many governments have procurement of building very important national infrastructures, and building those infrastructures, they require certain products originating in only certain countries or certain region. This is not, of course, seen very well from WTO regulations, saying that because I mean, this kind of protectionism, but many countries have this practice, and they use also the certificates of origin for that purposes, to ensure that the products are originated in the region or in a specific country, while they are used in the national level infrastructure projects. Also very important to mention that certificates of origin have a role for the trade statistics, tariff quotas. Many systems are using the certificates of origin as the components to actually calculate the quota, the restrictions of the quantities of the products that are imported or exported. And of course, many preferential certificates are mainly used for the providing favorable fiscal treatment for the goods. There are several ways of exchanges of certificates of origin. I mean, country to country, nation by nation, or let's say middleware softwares on multi-level exchange of information is provided by private sector, or also available between the different regulatory agencies. For example, we were talking about ASEAN. In case of ASEAN, single window, different customs administration can exchange the information for the ATICA through their gateways. What is very also important to mention, that overall the proliferation of FTAs, we have heard, I think, during one of the sessions, that right now there are more than 300 FTAs negotiated or already in place. And one of the components that increase the certificates of origin exchange is actually the proliferation of the FTAs with regards to the preferential certificates. Within the FTAs, we have several types of the certification. We can have self-certification from the exporter, importer. We can have also the authority-based preferential certificates. And one of the cases that we have made a recent research within the UNSCAP, it was regarding the certificate of origin between the China and Korea, electronic origin data exchange system. Actually, this system is used not only with China and Korea, but it's also available between the China and Singapore. And this FTA that was negotiated in 2015 between Korea and China signs that application and availability. It has showed that there is an increase of the trade and issuance of the certificates exchanges between the two countries. Right now, Republic of Korea have 57 free trade agreements, and the table below shows actually that some countries from the European Union and some countries from Asia, it shows the increase of the issuance and exchange of the certificates of origin of Republic of Korea with the 57 FTA countries. Of course, I would like to mention about the digitalization, the benefits of the digitalization of the certificates of origin. And what is very important to mention, I always, since I am coming, my profile is coming from public sector, I would like to mention always that it's not only benefiting to the private sector. Of course, the main beneficiary is the economic operator, the importer, the exporter, but it also benefits the public sector because there are many components of the compliance, regulatory compliance, and many components of the risk management that actually benefits the public sector as well. So it provides, enables accelerated real-time verification and validation of the certificates. The application of the advanced technologies provides insights for the trade policies. Many national policies are based on the information availability about their trade partners, what they are trading, what are the goods traded with their partnering trade countries. And based on that, they develop their national policies, national economic policies, what is going to be for the upcoming next years. So data-driven decision-making is very important component of the digitalization. While you have a paper-based, you cannot actually do all those, let's say, sophisticated analysis to enable more efficient policies. And of course, optimization of the processes. This is a very important component. I mean, the digitalization of the certificates of origin, this applies, of course, to all LPCOs, but is also very important for the certificate of origin. It enables the streamlining and issuance and validation and verification of the certificates of origin between the different partners on national level when the Chamber of Commerce of the customs authorities issue the preferential certificate of origin and exchange it with another importing authorities or importing economic operator. So it enable more streamlined business processes that can be provide, let's say, more automation because as I mentioned before, the PTF does not provide all the information and in the structured data, and you cannot automate the processes. Automation of the processes means that in some cases that there is no intervention of the importer or exporter to exchange the information, but while the certificate of origin is issued and validated by the importing issued and validated by the responsible authority, it can be automatically exchanged and pulled to the country of the importation. So there are many aspects. For example, for the risk management is also a very important aspect to have the certificate of origin. Many risk management profiles that are within the customs or other regulatory agencies, cross-border regulatory agencies that are part for a single window, they include components about the origin of the goods to identify and target the possible frauds or possible frauds for the fiscal aspects. So I would like to mention just some information regarding from the global UN trade facilitation survey from the part of the section of the formalities. So 2021 survey focusing on these sub-regions, South Asia, Southeast and Southeast Asia and Pacific Islands. We have identified that right now there are, I mean, these three regions together have 33 economies. And we have identified that there are actually 22 electronic application and issuance of preferential certificates within these 33 countries in these subregions. And there are 28 electronic exchanges of information about certificates of origin. Now, looking to these two data, you may think about there's some discrepancy, because if I have only 22 issuance of the certificates of origin electronically, how I can have 28 exchanges of information? And I come back to the aspects that I have mentioned before. Some of the exchanges of information are happening based on the emails and PDF versions of the certificates that the authorities or the importer receives and submit to the customs authorities for the as a supporting document for the declaration. So this one aspect that I would like to mention from the global survey, and you can go there and make your own analysis with the different aspects regarding the, for example, acceptance of the copies, which is would be the version of the PTF accepted by the different countries, or acceptance of the digital documents. I would like also to mention about Mr. Jan Duval mentioned about soft launch of cross-border paperless database, and there we have several projects all regarding the exchange of information between the different countries on bilateral, multilateral, and global level. And in that database, we have 7 projects that are listed there, all regarding the certificates of origin information exchange. As I say that there can be bilateral exchanges of information like the Singapore and Belgium based on the blockchain, or you can have middleware softwares, middleware private sector service providers like Morpheus platform, that we are linking different stakeholders in the actors in the supply chain and exchanging information from the exporting country to the importing country. So this is just one example how you can look to the information in the cross-border paperless database. This is the Morpheus project, and it links with the different stakeholders, as I mentioned, in the supply chain. And you can see that right now there's 5 countries that are linking together to exchange a certificate of origin using the Morpheus platform. This is what I wanted to mention about certificate of origin from the perspective of different availability of information within our secretariat. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to reply. Thank you.
So we heard about the electronic certificate of origin, and now we're gonna hear about all different existing systems for proofs of origin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I would like to introduce myself with Ha, former ASEAN Secretariat member, and I mean that I am consultant for ADB. I will give you a perspective from the negotiator as well as the implementer of this agreement, because you hear like a researcher and do the policy work. My presentations, I have some outlines here. First, I would like to introduce ASEAN FTA network, then the complication of ASEAN proof of origin in the implementation issues. Then I would like to introduce you the Form D, like the ECO, and the ASEP rules of origin. You see ASEAN have now like a 6-7 FTA, including ATIGA, and the recent is ASEAN Hong Kong. And this the charts of ASEAN. The first one is ASEAN China FTA. Is long time ago. It's nearly 20 years. And the reason is ASEP. Is cannot call ASEAN +1 FTA, but it's ASEAN-led initiative, the mega FTA of the region. And I believe that a lot of attention want to know on ASEP, and I welcome all the questions, and when we give time to address, including Sanita questions on ASEP Secretariat and ASEP transposition of PSR as well as TIS is quite technical. I don't know whether you can imagine. So it means that you can see the network of ASEAN very like broad, and the ASEAN FTA partner here are the big guys in the region: China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, India, and that's why I would like to introduce this, because I want to emphasize the complications and because we receive a lot of criticism that the ASEAN rules of origin not harmonized, and I want to show you here, because when we negotiate an FTA, there's a balance of power there, and the unharmonized is some kind of the outcome of negotiations, and we need to work on that. We understand that there's a lot of work to do, but I believe that ASEAN is on the right track to do so. From those FTA, I would like to give you the overview of some type of proof of origin of ASEAN FTA network. From ATIGA, we have CO as well as ECO. Later, I will introduce more. ATIGA have declaration of origin, but please remember that it's just only for certified exporter or approved exporter. It's totally different with what under the CPTPP. I don't know whether you can recognize it or not, the difference between the approved exporter or the normal under CPTPP. And other ASEAN plus one FTA, we only have a CO, even not ECO, even not declare origin. And for ASEP, we got a lot of type of proof of origin. Is CO, is DO, I mean that her declaration is made by approved exporter. We have DO for any exporter. We have DO for importer. You see, it's very complicated. And I don't know whether, I guess, because ASEP just implemented recent day, and I don't know whether any implementation issue arise. But there's some of my colleagues here from custom officials of ASEP country may answer these questions. And I think that is a very high, a huge workload for custom officials as well, because they have to remember. So don't criticize them much, because the complication of agreement itself put a lot of workload for them. Later, I will go in depth on ASEP proof of origin. Because I spent like one-third of my work, nearly one-third of my working life for ASEAN implementation of rules of origin. And we got a lot of implementation issues, even only CO, because you see ASEAN plus one, we have only CO. But even only CO, we have a lot of implementation, because with one partner, we have a different, the format of the CO is the same, but the way of implementing it is different. That is with one rules, if it's not really clear, especially rules for origins, you can interpret in this way or you can interpret on that way. Then it creates a lot of implication issues. So, for example, I list down some systematic issues. It means that it's issue created by the rules or the law accorded into the agreement. For example, that produce exclusively with RVC 100%. RVC 100% is actually is the same with produce exclusively. If you can tick in the CO form, but why is problem? Because in some FTA we don't have criteria of PE. We just only have WO general rule of RVC40 or CTH and product specific rule. So if I'm an exporter, I export, for example, I remember, in some, I remember there's, how to say, CO form E. We don't have this criteria. And there's exporter, or not exporter, but exporting countries, I remember from China, they do it 100% of RVC, sorry. Then they indicated PE, but there's no PE in the rules, I mean, in the, what we call overlap notes. Then 2000s of CO form rejected by an ASEAN member state. You see 2000 is billions of dollars because of this very simple reason. But it's systematic because the rule, that's why we need to harmonize it. That's why we need to harmonize it. But luckily, then when we did upgrade of ASEAN-China FTA, then we resolve it. It's just only one issue. The second issue is third-party invoicing and third country invoicing. When now you read the rules under ASEAN-China, you will, or ASEAN ANZ FTA or AHK FTA, ASEAN Hong Kong, they use it party. But for other rest of ASEAN FTA, they use country. So we have put of implementation issues. If I'm exporter and third invoice in the same country, so if you use third party there, you can accept it. But if you use the third country, it's the third, I mean, the invoice of the intermediate party is not third country. So can you accept it? So you see, different. Just so, but for ASEAN Hong Kong, you cannot put third country because Hong Kong is not a country. Don't look at me, Shanija. It's very complicated. You can criticize why it's not harmonized, but the real world is different. In practice, it's totally different. For another example on third-party invoicing is that what kind of FOB value should I put into this? You have a producer FOB value. You have the first issuer of the invoice FOB value. You have the second issuer of FOB value. You have a last. So what you put in the CO form? What should I accept? Because different FOB value, it gives different percentage of the RVC. So what is the good solution for it? Cannot answer, right? Then we need to negotiate and discuss. Or even the simple things like indications of box S in the CO form. The box S, we have to indicate the origin criteria. If my goods RVC 45%, what I should indicate it? Because the rule of origin says that it's general rule of CTH or RVC 40. So what I should indicate it? In some FTA, they said that you just only indicate RVC, no number there, because this shipment or this good already passed RVC criteria. Other FTAs, they said that this CO form, you should indicate RVC 40 because the general rule is RVC 40. But other FTAs said that you should indicate RVC 45% because it's actual rate of the good. And when we check, we see that it's already above 40%, and so it's confused the exporter how to eat. And because of this reason, some CO form rejected as well, because they don't really read. I don't know whether you are the you come from exporter or manufacturer or here, or have you ever go to apply a CO form or not? But when you apply a CO form, have you ever read the overlap notes or not? Because overlap note gives you the guidance how to fulfill the CO form. But I guess because of a lot of FTA of ASEAN, then You have to remember different practice. Even the same rules, even dog is the same. The way you produce is the same, but you have to remember different way of indicating very simple number. So it creates a lot of implementation issue, as well as the discourage exporter to use the one of the reason, one of the reason discourage you, because you have to remember a lot, you have to do a lot, you have to digest a lot. That's why the need for harmonization. I give a lot of implementation issue because here, but I don't have a time to explain one by one. That's why I try to keep it simple, but you can approach my presentation later on. I will disseminate it, as you see. And there's also some one-off issue, like very, very funny like that. The box 13 in the CO form, you need to tick, it's tick, but you put it with the X and they reject it because it's all previously. But I mean, this was some one-off issue, but is in practice. I mean, in the real world, it's happened. In the real world, it's happened. That's why we always call for the flexibility from custom officers. Don't reject CO form, just only one and check it to do verification check. Yeah, a lot of implementation, but I don't have time. And I would like to introduce some things like ASEAN have done so far. We have two big things. One is a white self-search scheme, and the other ECO. I will ECO form D. We will talk later on. For white self-search, previously we have two pilot projects. It's pilot 1 and pilot 2, and the member of pilot 1 and pilot 2 different because the criteria, the condition is different. I'm very quick on this. But in September, since September 2019, ASEAN merged the pilot project into ASEAN-wide self-search scheme. This means that you allowed all ASEAN member states join in only one, and they can use this to export to each other. And this allows certified exporter to self-certify themselves on the goods. It's very promising, right? Because you can certify those, but then the real world is not as our expectation. Then, as you can see, but the condition there, to be CE in a certified exporter, you need to pass 7 conditions. It's not, that's why I say it's not simple. It's not like under CPTPP, any exporter can certify yourself. This, you need to be certified exporter. And when I do it, I see that it's not so much utilized. Even the mechanism already there. The first thing is top conditions. Like I already introduced 7 conditions. I don't want to go in detail, but you can read it in a lot of material what is condition. The second is that not so many people know this, know ASEAN-wide sales scheme. You still some of my friends asking me what the status of pilot 1, what's the status of pilot 2, but actually since 2019, it's already merged. So I mean that the outreach of this is not as good. And the third thing is the number of CEs limited. The number of CE limited, I think that is the first issue already answered you, like a top condition. But the second, I mean, the other maybe other reason, where there's a hesitation of issuing authorities to approve for those exporter. As you can see, the total number here is 662 for the whole region can do it. It's very small. We have like millions of exporters. And because of the tough conditions, the SMEs, they cannot do it. It's only for the very big one, very big company. That is quite disappointed. I'm from the policymaker, but this number quite disappointed. Like Vietnam, you see, now become a manufacturing hub of the region, but they only have 9. I believe that we need to accelerate it to give more exporter to become the certified exporter. Would like to introduce the ECO. ECO as well is implemented in December 2019, and ASEAN use ASEAN single window to transfer the data from that. And as of now, I mean that in 2021, nearly 900 CO form is changed, and currently 4 countries fully implemented. Other countries, they implement both ECO and hard copy CO. But these 4 countries, they implement it fully. They don't issue the hard copy CO because they want to push enterprises to apply for ECO to change their habit. ASEAN now is discussing a sunset clause to stop the using of hard copy of the CO. The reasons you see, it sounds promising, it sounds interesting, but the real world is not as good as what we expect. Because ECO, you just only transfer electronically one type of document. It's just only CO. How about other supporting documents like invoice, packing list? I think that Stefano and already highlighted before. That's why, yep, I know that only 4 minutes. Okay, very quick. And then because of a lot of problem, like IT infrastructure, technical disparity, especially LCD country. That's why really call for the support of big organization like ADB, UN, Escape, or UNTAC to help those countries to improve their infrastructure. And yeah, solution there, outreach, the policy determinations, capacity building, the assistance, technical assistance from big player integration. So yes, why I want to answer why ASEAN's like a lot of criticisms, they're not harmonized. ASEAN +1 FTA rules for reason. Actually, we did, but the effects, the outcome is not as much as we expect. And the work is still going on. You can see ASEAN ANZ FTA. They already negotiate and on the way. In the future, ASEAN China continue to operate, and the review of ASEAN Korea as well as ASEAN India is one of the things. So for ASEP, I don't really have much time. So for ASEP, I would like to introduce the proof of origin, like what I say. They got so many types. CO, issued by issuing authority. DO is by approved exporter. DO by any exporter, and declaration of origin of importer. For the last one, declaration origin of importer is just only for Japan. It's Japan practice. And you can see ASEAN's very generous. They include all practice in the agreement. Japan practice, Australia, New Zealand practice under CTTP, the declaration by any exporter. And then ASEAN way, declaration by approved exporter or certified exporter. And the traditional way is CO. And the currently its status for CO, all country implemented because it's the traditional way and standard way. For the declarations of origin by exporter, only Singapore, Thailand, Australia, China, Japan, and Korea implemented. You can see even the platform already there, but not all countries implemented. Because for the declaration and rules of origin by approved exporter, is can implemented by the first day of the entry to force of the agreement. But for declaration by any exporter, it's just only implemented 10 years after agreement. I mean, it's a must, but you can go, I mean, have early harvest if you want. That's why Australia, New Zealand, and Japan they implemented now is the same that what they implemented under CPTPP and for declaration of origin only Japan. So because time's not my side and I have to stop it, but I will answer the question on ASEP things in the last section, right? Do you have any question? Can email me on ASEP and ASEAN rules of origin, because I spent like 10 years for this. That's why I hope I can somehow answer the questions. I will disseminate my presentation later on, and if you have any question, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Padmanha. Yes, thank you for this extensive presentation. We all, I think, understand your deep knowledge about these technical issues. And yes, feel free to reach out to Hai. We'll be happy to answer. So you mentioned RCEP is very generous, providing all different types of system and different calendars of implementation. It's generous. It generates also difficulties for private sector. So I propose we go for 10 minutes break, and then we'll reconvene for a last session where we will have the vision by practitioners, by private sector and firms to let us know, how it works in practice. Thank you very much. So you have questions, I guess, on the first two presentations, right? Okay, so maybe we take the questions first, a few questions. So who has questions? I'm happy to, okay. So, yeah.
Thank you. No, okay, so it's a very interesting topic because it's true, it's a very serious issue, right? There's this rules of origin business. But I had a question about the data, right? Because we've been working on even bilateral trade agreements, right? But once those things are signed, actually countries don't want to give the data on utilization rate, right? So what I'm a bit curious on how you get your data. For ASEAN, is it published? Maybe it's a public good because you mentioned it's a public good, right? So it should be, but actually in practice, I don't think it's a public good. So I'm very curious about the data source. And I'm also, and I was wondering whether, data quality actually affects, some of the findings for the ASEAN as well, because I understand the data for the trade that where you receive that receives the preferences may be very accurate, but the data, the overall the overall trade for that may actually not be accurate, right? Because of misinvoicing and all kind of there is all those misreporting of data and so on. So the top of your utilization rate may be correct, but the denominator may not be correct, and that could be one explanation. So I was just wondering whether what you think of this.
Well, thank you very much for your question. As I said, there is when the figures are not positive, the people, they start wondering the figures, but the figures are accurate. The figures that we're getting there, are from the ASEAN Secretariat, that has published a study some years ago, and they came out with the same findings, but also the utilization rate of ASEAN has been low for decades. Not only, between 2016 and 2018, because if you look at the official record, again, even 2010, they were showing very low utilization rate. The point is that the ASEAN policymakers simply don't want to recognize that the utilization are low. But they recognize that when they strive, to improve it, but they are not reaching the target of raising these utilization rates. And this casts doubts also on the newcomers, in the sense, on what will be the utilization rate of RCEP, which has been, the newcomer, the new girl in town, that everybody expects, gains from it. But the point is that what will be the utilization rate of RCEP, obviously in the utilization rate, for instance, of the bilaterals, the ASEAN dialogue, ASEAN +1, we don't have. We are the only one of Japan, because Japan, is publicly available in the website. But obviously we will be back, to this. Where we have also the presentation by Ha, which is, has been working before, in the ASA Secretariat, so he will be able to come and, give the real flavor of ASEAN, since he has been working there for quite some time.
Hi, my name is Sanchita from ADB. I'll just continue with what Yan just mentioned, like these data in ASEAN, it's not publicly or readily available. And yes, we are correct that they should be available in the ASEAN website. It should be available on the countries, because each of these countries, ASEAN members, is not just one FTA. It's not ASEAN FTAs. They have bilateral, they have regional. So they should be available. So did we have representative like Ha also is present here, like what is the reason? Because what I hear is there is a separate reason behind this. It's more international relation. Because if you put this data online by country or by ASEAN, you are basically saying, say, for example, ASEAN-China is the most used FTA. You are saying, okay, our relationship with China is more, say, pronounced compared to other countries in the region. So that could be a reason, I don't know, but I would like to hear from the panelists who are the expert on this field, why these are not done, because ASEAN is not a new player. ASEAN has been doing this since 2000. So that's my first question, because this is a discussion happening for a very, very long time. I'll stop there and maybe I will have some follow-up question.
Thank you, Sanita, for the question. I'm representative from Escape. The question on the data. I know that the data from ASEAN is very tough for you to assess. For me, I was like a former ASEAN Secretariat staff, and even ourselves as well, like the body of ASEAN, but we find that it's quite challenging to get the data from member states. The reason behind this, actually, the member state answers just a pure technical reasons, not policy, not political reason, like what Sanita said. It just says that it's very difficult because their IT levels, IT infrastructure, some kind of not facilitate to extract those data. They can give us the total number of export-import, but when you break into the national tariff level, it's very tough to have data with them. This set of data we have, luckily, is from the mandate of minister. When we do the ATIGA review, then we have the minister request. So it's not, it's not public. Thank you.
Yes, I would like just to add also on this what we were talking about. I think what would be also a perspective from the technical perspective to say that about showing the data is not something very simple. I mean, reconciliation of trade data is not something very simple. Many countries that are importing based on the certificate of origin of preferential or non-preferential, and also in some cases that trade data imported from a country A to country B may not be as accurate as the exportation of country A to country B. So to be able to actually publish information and data, before they should be able to accurately reconcile data. The reconciliation of data also come with the accurate use of the WCOH's harmonized system. If there is not proper description, harmonized system between the two countries, I mean, this happens also on national level. On national level, there is discrepancy between the different departments, different branches of the government regarding the products that we are exporting. I mean, this happens now. You can have it. And if there's no reconciliation, there's no proper harmonization of the relevant data that is going to be published between the countries, actually one country publishing information can be discrepancy with the country of the importation or exportation. So this is a technical aspect that you should always take into consideration.
I just want to add something about this. It's just that for utilization rates, we are talking about import data. So there is no really a question about exports, because even if there is discrepancies, it can be, I think as a classic of any trade economist, you would know that you have always this discrepancy, and to get the mirror data, you need to have more analysis, you have batchy data sets, you have different possibilities. But here we talk really about import data, because so exactly, if you are a country, you want to know how your exporters are performing. It's not in your country, it's in the partner country that you are going to collect this information. So just to clarify, this is the importing country, customs, that would collect those data, because they are the ones applying the tariff at customs. So they are the ones who can tell us what has been done at the end. Yes, on why is this complicated, I don't know, but just to clarify that in this case, we are really looking at import data. And just about Sanchita, yes, the question you had.
I love ASEAN, and I would love if anyone defend ASEAN by technical or any other reasons. My other question is like, okay, for the RCEP, we are currently talking a lot about RCEP, and it's the darling of trade agreements in the region. So are we expecting through this study, like what is your thing? How much do you expect the utilization rate will go up? What are you thinking? Like, that's the first question. Because what I heard is basically is RCEP is the solution for all the fragmented or number of FTAs in the region. That's one thing. And the second is what I heard is currently the ASEAN countries or the RCEP members, they have only endorsed the 2012 harmonization HS code classification. And we are already got 2017 and maybe 2022 will be coming soon. And we still don't have the RCEP secretariat yet. So where are we now with the RCEP?
Okay, just about this, about our studies, what we say in our paper is that basically the history of ASEAN is not, does not bode so well for RCEP in the sense that some of the rules have been inherited from ATIGA, and so we're not sure, and from consultations with the countries, it seems implementation has not started everywhere yet, but more information from
Okay, ASEAN always like attract a lot of intentions at this point in time. Just answer Sanita's questions, the utilization rate of ASEP. You just see that ASEP just being implemented. Few days ago, you saw some article about Indonesia Parliament passes. So it means that Indonesia just implemented after the pass of Parliament. There are some country, not some, but one country, I guess Philippines still haven't passed the approval. Yep, that's why ASEP just started. It just started. And as far as I know, there's one AMS, they already passed. From the Parliament already passed, but they haven't implemented because their infrastructures do not allow them to implement ASEP. They need even Parliament already passed. So at this point in time, it's tough to say. I try to approach my college, my former college, to have some data of the utilizations of ASEP, but still tough to get it. First question, answer your question. The second is that when I negotiated ASEP, I make it from the very early starting point of ASEP, and I'm in charge of, luckily for me, in charge of trade in goods, where it's a tariff cut. The second is the rules of origin, because they put me to the rules of origin when I nearly finished tariff. Even I started ASEP before it negotiated, because we have to do preparatory work. I guess in 2012. I'm sorry, I take a long time, but ASEP. So very quick answer to you that we don't expect ASEP to give a big push for tariff liberalization. You can check it, because the sensitivity of 16 countries. That's Indian was before. and then we need to balance the interests of the country. That's why you see the tariff rate of RCEP is not as high as ASEAN +1. What we expect here is RCEP is a harmonization of rules of origin in this region. I think that for RCEP, we can further elaborate in the later part. Then I will answer most of the question. Not answer, but like give my views on the RCEP later. I think that is really interesting because we are not have much time for the next section. Thank you.